All right. Did it work this time?
Well, Mark said he's logged in twice. And
We've had some technical difficulties. Is there anybody on that can hear us? Here we go. I see somebody said,
KB just
said it's working for me now. So I'm guessing that means we might have to kind of basically start over a little bit, huh? Because nobody saw the beginning of anything, did they? I'm assuming.
I'm going to assume.
Yeah, okay. Well, welcome everyone. Sorry for the confusion. It was giving us a little bit of a technical issue. It showed us as logged in, but I could see everybody saying they couldn't see anything, so I had to close everything back out, come back in. So welcome everyone to Peraton's Mission Transition Podcast. I'm your host today, Brian Acton, here with Peraton's Military and Veteran Talent Operations team. So today we're talking about resumes and applicant tracking system optimization. As always, you can reach out to us at militaryconnect@peraton.com, or you can research our careers at careers.peraton.com. So I'm going to get some of this through the first a little bit real fast here, folks, because we are behind now. So introduce myself again real quick. Brian Acton, been in talent acquisition just about 25 years now. Done it for the DoD, federal government, contractor, and corporate sectors. Veteran of both the Marine Corps and the U.S. Army. Been with Peraton for 5 years. And Brett, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. My name's Brett Bugden. Been with Peraton for almost 4 years now. Retired from the United States Army in 2018 as a human intel collector. As soon as I retired, I figured out that wasn't a life for me because I could only catch so many fish and shoot so many deer. So about 6 months after retirement, I jumped right back into recruiting, which was what I was comfortable with, and I've been doing it ever since. Absolutely love it. Been with the military transition team for about 2 years, so it's pretty amazing.
Nice. Brent's a great guy, folks. Love working with Brent. He's fun. We have some really fun conversations. I'm sure you guys can tell. And then everyone may know Jeff Carson as well. He is our road warrior. He's our event guy. I think between the three of us, Jeff does the most events, but as a team, we plan like 150 events this year and stuff. So we're really, really busy when it comes to this stuff. He's an Army veteran, 16 years in recruiting, been with Peraton for 8 years. He is on vacation this week though. So he is enjoying some time somewhere else. So you just have Brent and myself today. So we'll go ahead and move on along. I'll skip this. We'll just jump right into it. so we can play a little bit of catch up. This is about where we were when the issues were starting anyway. So really what we want to talk about resume parsing. So resume parsing is what happens to your resume when you upload it into an applicant tracking system, right? So anytime you apply to a job anymore, you're going into an applicant tracking system somewhere, right? So we really wanted to talk about presenting that information in a way that makes your information easily readable by recruiters. So the first big one is avoid placing personal information in headers or footers. I would say any information realistically. Applicant tracking systems don't like to read headers and footers. So if you do have your contact information in there, for me, when I upload resumes on behalf of folks and they have that information in there, sometimes it doesn't pick it up and it won't let me upload it. So I have to manually put that information into the applicant tracking system. And the last thing you really want to be happening is recruiters have to manually put your information in because, when you're looking at 200 resumes for one role, that's just not something you're going to do, that kind of stuff. So clearly ensure your name is clearly listed on a separate line, though. I do see a lot of folks that like to put multiple, put their name and email and maybe their LinkedIn on one line. I would suggest staying away from that because what happens is when the applicant tracking system is trying to read that, sometimes it has trouble discerning where your name stops and your email address starts and that kind of stuff. So your names, I see some really weird looking names in our applicant tracking system because it's picked up different parts of the name and decided what your name was going to be, that kind of stuff. So here's that example piece right there. As you can see, everything's on a different line. Absolutely. If you're applying for cleared roles here at Peraton, it's imperative to have your clearance prominently listed on your resume, though, because we want to be able to see that information within 10 to 15 seconds of looking at your resume. And the reason for that is if you are reviewing 200 resumes for one role, you're just doing a brief scan as a recruiter. You're looking for the base information first. And we'll talk about what that information is further on when we'll talk a little bit more about the 10 to 15 second recruiter read. Also, don't include images, graphics, or unnecessary formatting elements. I know, Microsoft Word makes obviously some real great formatting options out there, right? So the fancier you get, typically the harder it is for a recruiter to read, so if you see a lot of color on there, columns and stuff like that, it can start to throw us off when we have to look all over your resume for basic information, right? So I highly suggest staying away from that. Simple's better when it comes to a resume. Because we'll know where to find the information much faster, when we're looking at your resume as well. So that's the beginning right there. So jumping right in. So moving on forward with it, strategic keywords placement as well. In addition to using relevant keywords throughout your resume, position them strategically in sections, right? As an example, if we're looking for a Java developer or something like that, and I type Control F on your resume and type the word Java in, and I only get one hit, but I need someone with 10 years of experience, it's going to really start lowering you down on the next, moving to the next phase real fast, because we're going to want to see relevant information to the role, relevant into your resume, right? Use keyword variations. What may happen is, what we have as a cybersecurity engineer listed in our requirements, and another company might have as a cybersecurity engineer listed in their requirement. It might be the same thing. We're just calling it something else as a company. That you'll see a lot of that. Especially in like what I do in talent acquisition, right? Some places will call it a technical recruiter, and then they'll call it a full desk recruiter, and then they'll call it something else, a talent acquisition business partner. But it's the same role realistically, right? But using those key terms that are relevant to that company can also help. Utilize section headings effectively, though. Objective statement, skills, experience, certifications. And we'll talk about placement of those, though, too, as we get a little further into it and why those are absolutely important. So this is just kind of a brief run on it. This is just to get your information parsed into the system, right? And just so everyone knows, though, too, I know there's a lot of talk out there about like AI and stuff like that. What we don't do here is there's no AI qualifying you for jobs around here. So you are getting looked at by a human being at some point, pending you pass some initial screenings, right? So there may be some questions that when you're applying to a job at Peraton, it may ask, do you have a TSSCI? Do you have, this certification, something like that. And those can be pre-qualification questions where if you answer no, you're just not qualified for the role, regardless of your experience, that type of thing. So, but after that, once you're in there, it does, a human presence is looking and reviewing your resume at some point in that sense. All right. Anything you want to add on that, Brent?
No, sir.
All right. So continuing the guidelines here. So tailor your resume into thematic versions. And kind of what I mean by that is I do talk to a lot of folks that are kind of on the fence of, do I want to be a project manager, a program manager, an individual contributor, those type of things. So those are going to be two different resumes, even if it's for the same type of skill sets, right? So you may need to make more than one resume then, because I think we're all aware, though, right now, the job market's tough growth, right? So you may really want a program management role, but I'm pretty sure those are really difficult to find right now, right? So even an individual contributor role. So chances are you're probably applying to both sides of the fence when it comes to those type of things. So, you're going to want to make a specific program manager or project manager level role. And then you're going to want to have one that's more technical, skills-based, skills-focused resume as well, because a skills-focused resume is going to ask you, different experiences versus a management role. Leverage industry research for keyword optimization. So really what we mean by that is analyze multiple job descriptions of what you're applying to, see what the common skills and experiences are. What are the common keywords that we're using for a cybersecurity engineer? What are the common themes there so that you can apply those to your resume as well. And the beautiful thing about that, though, too, is there is AI tools out there that will help you do this. So don't feel like you got to spend, a whole weekend spending, 16 hours, doing this kind of thing. There's tools out there that'll help you do that. You can ask, put multiple job description links into AI and say, hey, analyze this and tell me, what's the bulk of the knowledge, skills, and experience this is looking for. Resume size, this is always debatable. I know it's very objective, but like I said, I've been doing it a long time, and I personally don't really care how long someone's resume is, as long as it's relevant information though, right? So if you have a 3 or 4 page resume, but you have 25 years of experience, and it's all relevant to the roles, that's okay too. What you want to get away from though is having a resume that's long, but it's giving a lot of irrelevant information, jobs that are irrelevant to the roles you're applying to now, especially if you're doing a career shift, right? So, I always use myself as an example. I used to be an infantry guy. That's nowhere on my resume because it's not relevant to any role that I would apply to in those type of sense. Not that I'm not proud of that, but I understand that I had to make that shift. But, going beyond that 1 or 2 pages, that's easy to do. But you just want to make sure it's relevant experience realistically. And optimizing your LinkedIn profile with public-friendly information, okay? I know we talk to a lot of folks, especially folks that are transitioning out, that haven't really done much with their LinkedIn. But that's a different podcast. We won't go into too much detail on leveraging your LinkedIn right now, but you should have a LinkedIn that sort of mirrors your resume though, right? Because that's how we're using information to find you on LinkedIn as well. So when you've kind of done some of this keyword optimization, where you've identified key knowledge, skills, and experiences that you should be on your resume for this type of role, and you've added those in there, then we can also search you and find you, because that's the words we're going to be using to search and find people when we need to do that. Brent, anything you want to add on this one?
One of the biggest things is the last point that you brought up, optimizing your LinkedIn profile. If you're not using that LinkedIn, you're definitely selling yourself short. That Brian was saying, that's the first thing that we'll look at whenever we pull it up, especially if there's holes in your resume or we have additional questions. We'll pull up that LinkedIn, we'll look at it, we'll review it, because 9 times out of 10, if you have a very good LinkedIn, it's going to answer all the questions that we have and fill in those gaps. So that's one of the biggest points that I'd like to bring to it.
Yeah, for sure. It's a huge one. And that's our next podcast, actually, I think, is leveraging your LinkedIn.
Yes, sir.
I'm pretty sure it's the next one. So that was one of my favorites, really. Okay, now here's one of the biggest ones. If you take anything away from today's session, if you will, it's the objective statement, the contact information we talked about, and this objective statement. So this is really what starts off your review with a recruiter, if you will, right? So like I said, if we're looking for that TSSCI role, secret role, what have you, should definitely have already had that listed in your contact information, because we're scanning from top to bottom very fast. So I'm looking for the clearance. The next thing I'm going to read is the objective statement. What does that say? So what you don't want to be is a jack of all trades though, right? I have experience in operations, logistics, human resources, program and project management, and you list all these things, but we're looking for a IT technical program manager, or we're looking for a tier 1 help desk or something like that, right? So first impressions matter when it comes to that. So the first sentence of your objective statement, or whatever you want to call that first block, executive summary, that first sentence should tell me everything about who you are. And that's what will determine if I'll probably look at any other thing else on your resume. So if I'm looking for a cybersecurity professional, as an example, that first sentence should say something like, cybersecurity professional with 10 years of experience in ABC, looking to do ABC. That type of thing. Like, it doesn't have to be a paragraph or anything like that, 3 or 4 sentences, but that first sentence should tell me exactly who you are though, directly. Because if I'm looking for a cybersecurity professional, it should tell me you're a cybersecurity professional, because then once I've read that, I'm going to look at what's your last job. Is your last job as a cybersecurity professional? And that's your 10, 15 second read right there. Clearance, first sentence of your objective statement, last job, and certifications if it requires certification. So that's why these are so huge. So tailor your objective statement to align with the specific type of roles you're after though. So you shouldn't have to really rewrite an objective statement every time you apply to a role, because that should be a snapshot. It should be a snapshot of who you are. So that should never change, right? It also demonstrates your clear career direction and goals. especially if you're making a career transition, right? So if you're transitioning out right now and starting a whole new career path, which a lot of folks are, you need to say that on there, because it shouldn't say, command sergeant major such and such, because that's not a title out here though. In that sense, we want a cybersecurity professional, or we want to help tier 1 help desk, or those type of things. So it should say exactly what your career direction and goals are though. And it also highlights how your skills and experience meet our needs as an employer at the same time though. So this one's a huge one right here. I'm real big on talking about objective statements with folks and making sure that aligns well and creates that snapshot of who you are though. So if you took anything from that today, that's probably the one right there. Is the clearance prominently listed in your contact information, and an objective statement that gives me clear direction when I read this to exactly who I'm reading about in that sense. Because we got to get through those initial pieces before I'm really going to read any detail of your resume, right? Because it has to draw me in, because I got 200 resumes to look at if you think about it. Brent, what do you think about this one? I know we talk about this one quite a bit.
One of the biggest ones is whenever you're reading through that requisition and you're wanting to make sure that you're with that position, if you see words like keywords, hot words that repeat themselves, make sure you're capturing that on that resume, because like Brian said earlier, whenever hiring managers are looking for certain certs or certain education, certain things, they're going to type in those keywords throughout that requisition, and they're going to pull the resumes that have those keywords in their resume. So you want to make sure that you are mirroring those hot words into your resume.
Yeah, I like that. It kind of rang my bell, when you said that, especially, what Brent's putting out there is, if you're looking at a cybersecurity role and it mentions stigging in it 5 or 6 different times in the qualifications and what the role is going to do, I'd put that in my objective statement. Experience in stigging, a cybersecurity professional, 10 years experience with experience in stigging and such, whatever else they put in the job description that they want for that type thing. Or if it's, Intel analyst, Intel analyst, 5 years experience using, analyst notebook, hot R, yada, yada, and those type of things, because it says, okay, you seem qualified out the gate. Let me read further now to make sure you are type of thing. So imperative, I think Brent hit a really imperative one there though. If you see repeating things, there's a reason, because you got to think about, as recruiters though too, we're not masters of all these trades though either. I'm not a cybersecurity professional. I'm not an Intel analyst. I'm not a tier 1 help desk person. So I just have the qualifications that they give us. So that's how we do some of the qualifications is we scan your resume first, we search it, and then we'll probably have a phone call with you before we send you over to the hiring manager and try to set up an interview or something like that to verify those qualifications. Okay. So you should have, okay. Yeah, so I want to give some examples. I don't know how this looks on the user side out there. It's really big on my screen. So, but, I wanted to give you some examples because a lot of people ask me, can you give us some examples? You see, there's some broad objective statements. This was a program manager one. This was something I did take from someone's resume. I took some information off so they would know. But as you can see, if I read that first sentence, it really tells me nothing about the role they're applying for here, though. It gives very little information. So hopefully you guys can read that. If you can't, well, reach out to me and I can send it to you. Reach out to us at militaryconnect@paraton.com and I'll send them over to you so you can get these ideas. But you can see, hopefully everyone can read that first statement. It says highly motivated and results-oriented Army officer with over 14 years of a diverse leadership experience across the National Guard, active duty, and reserves. I have no idea what you're applying at the company for, though, in that sense, if that makes sense, everyone reading that. So we won't read the whole objective statement, of course, because, we're still trying to keep time here. I think we're doing well now. I sped it up a little bit. But then we have a more focused objective statement. This one, in my opinion, is even still a little bit longer, but it did include some of the specific things that they were looking for in the job description. It's a cybersecurity professional with 15 years of experience and deep understanding of information security principles, network security, and identifying and minimizing cybersecurity risks. because that was in the job description, actually. The network security and the security principles and the NIST was all in the job description. So that first sentence told me exactly who I'm reading about in that sense, in relative to the role they're applying to. Because the other statement really just tells me who you are, not what career field you're in. So I hope that makes sense. Brent, anything you want to add on these ones right here? I know we talk about these ones, but they might be hard to read across the board for some of the folks. I don't know if they're on phones and stuff like that, but I wanted to kind of give some kind of examples on these thoughts.
No, you pretty much took exactly what I was going to say. So, no.
Yeah. I mean, because we see it all the time, like we deal with a lot of transitioning service members though too, right? So that's why we're really good at kind of talking about the objective statements, if you will. Especially here, we're in the DC area. I'm in the DC area. Oh, Brent's out there in Tampa. So I deal with a lot of transitioning officers, right? And that's a hard transition to make in that sense. So having that objective statement, even if you're going through that program manager role, should be very direct about what you're looking, what you do, how long you've been doing it, and what your qualifications are real fast in that sense. So, and that's a long objective statement though, too. That one, to my opinion, is still kind of a little bit long, but I don't really care about the rest of it. If I read the first sentence and it tells me the information I need to qualify you. All right, man, we really picked this up. So how to request assistance. So we'll talk about reaching out to people though too. So this is how to request assistance from our team, but this is kind of a policy you can follow anywhere. It will absolutely increase your response rate from people you're reaching out to. All right. So personally, as a team, we get a lot of folks that reach out to us. Hey, Brian. Hey, Brent. Hey, Jeff. Here's my resume. What jobs am I qualified for? My answer is always like, I don't know. I have no idea. We don't do the job search for you because there's a lot of nuance to it though, right? And as an example, I have in the past helped people with the job search. And then I spend 45 minutes doing it, send them 3 jobs. And they're like, oh, I want to work in Maryland. I want to work in Virginia. Well, okay. You didn't give me that information prior to that, and that kind of stuff. So really what you want to do when you reach out to folks, that's a no-go for me anyway. I usually don't even respond to those anymore because I get so many of those. And it's just, I have an email I send back sometimes that says, hey, you got to do this, and then I help you out. So obviously it's the first time you're reaching out to anyone, whether it's LinkedIn, sending us an email, always attach your resume so we know what we're working with. If you've already applied to any jobs or you're planning to apply to jobs, give us those role ID numbers. They're always on the website. I didn't update the slide, but it would start with a 2026 normally, and a 6-digit number. If you've already applied, add some qualification bullets. Tell us like, hey, I applied to this role. Here's how I meet the qualifications. It's listed on it. And allow us time for response. So, we do get many messages, but we're a very responsive team. I can tell you that. I have OCD for unread emails myself, so I don't like seeing anything unread. And that's kind of the beginning step right there. So if you're reaching out to folks on LinkedIn or you're reaching out to one of us and it's your first time reaching out to us, give us that basic information right there. Because really what that does is it's a time saver for you because it lets us know, hey, this person might already be qualified for this role. Let me look it up real quick. Oh, cool. Instead of having us then have to have 15 different email conversations or phone call conversations to determine if you were qualified or not, even in that type of sense as well. Brent, anything you want to add on this one? I know you go through this quite a bit too.
The biggest one is, I guess, the response thing. I know everybody, most people that we talk to are like, well, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to, be the squeaky wheel, but definitely don't ever hesitate to reach out. If you're not getting responses back, within 48 to 72 hours, as far as feedback from whenever you apply to certain recs or you don't know if you're still in the running, please ping one of us and let us know. That's one of the biggest ones. And like Brian said from the beginning, definitely don't hit us up and be like, hey, here's my resume. What do you have for me? Because we get 60,000 resumes a month. And that's on a slow month. So definitely we pull a report every single Monday of just our funded positions. We have no issue sending those out to you. So it'll help you narrow down that search. So you'll know exactly what the positions are. You'll know exactly where they're located and clearance level as well. So we can send that out, narrow down that search, and you can say, hey, I'm interested in this position. We can review that resume with you, go back and forth, make sure all the keywords, hot words are in that resume, and then we can submit it for you on your behalf.
Yeah. I really think that's the key piece. I mean, if there's anyone on the phone call that's applying to roles at Peraton and hasn't been in contact with Brent, Jeff, or myself, you're doing yourself a disservice because we do concierge applications through the process. It's the beauty of the role that we have here. We're not technically traditional recruiters in that sense, so we don't have a particular role that we're assigned that we're trying to fill. We actually have access to the whole organization. So any role at Peraton, we can move candidates forward into the process to get reviewed and stuff like that. So that's the service we really offer. Now, we do ask for more information. Don't get me wrong. We're going to ask you to give us some more information about your qualifications for a particular role. But that's really what we do here. So that's why some of that information is very important. And we have a pretty good success rate though too. So we do it well. And I think that's about going to sum us up for the podcast information. I do see there's been some questions in there.
I've hit them all. One thing I did want to add real quick, Brian, is if you're applying to roles and you're not getting feedback, one of the benefits of us sending out that report every week is when you get onto our website and our portal, you'll see 1,200 to 1,500 positions, which include everything from contingent to unfunded to proposal. So whenever you apply to those, you can't see which ones are actually 100% funded, and that's kind of the benefit of what we send out every week. So if you're getting not getting the feedback and you're getting aggravated because you're not getting it, could be because you've applied to roles that are basically just sitting there waiting for that contract to actually open up and get funded. So I wanted to throw that out.
Yeah. And, I think that's something we can kind of discuss on though too, as we're waiting for some more questions to come in is, we do get a lot of questions about getting feedback or getting a response from a role you applied to. And, just to be, how it works, it's not really, it doesn't really work like that out here so much in the sense if you apply to a role and you're not selected, like it's harder to get much feedback beyond that because you got to remember they're looking at hundreds of resumes. So to give one individual highly specific feedback on why they didn't meet the role can be difficult. So now, of course, if you go to an interview phase and you've interviewed and you don't get selected, obviously you should get some kind of feedback. Hey, they went with another candidate who had, more experience in this or that or something like that. But just applying to roles and not getting selected, getting feedback for that's going to be difficult. Even if you're working with one of us, sometimes, it could just be timing. Sometimes, if you go to review not selected, they might have another candidate already selected for the role, but it just hasn't made its way through the systems yet and that type of thing as well. So Mark asks, when applying for roles and getting rejected repeatedly, is it frowned upon to cast a wide net across levels from entry to senior roles? Not necessarily, Mark. I think what you want to focus on though is, because I do work with a lot of folks that, hey, I've applied to like 50 roles at Peraton. I haven't got anything. And you got to realize if you're applying to entry level roles all the way to senior level roles using the same resume, that would be a red flag for me though, to say that like, is the information really aligning? Because even if it's an entry level role, the information still has to align though. And you have to explain that though too in your resume, because if we look at it as recruiters and I see you've got 18 years of experience in something and you're applying to a role that's looking for 2 to 3 years of experience, does your objective statement say that? I'm looking for an entry level role because, and then that makes sense to me, right? In that first sentence, those type of things. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's success on spamming applications is usually typically low in sense versus if you've had a much more targeted, focused search. And there's ways to do that too, where you can use parentheses in your search terms and quotations and stuff like that, which will help narrow down. And if you're searching for roles, a quick way to search for roles that you might be qualified for as well. But we all know companies title jobs all kinds of different titles, right? But searching by skill set, not necessarily by job title. So if you're looking for a program manager role, as an example, and you just get on any job board and type in program manager, good luck sorting through that, right? I mean, that's gonna be a list like you never seen, right? Like you can make it through that. But what you can do is search by specific skill sets that you have and then it'll find roles with those skill sets and not just by job title as well. What else do we got? Anything else I should touch back on? Let me look at some of the questions up here, see if there's any out.
I just see a quick one from Mark. When applying for roles and getting rejected repeatedly, is it frowned upon to cast a wide net across levels from entry to senior level roles? You didn't answer that, did you, Brian?
Yeah, that's the one I was just talking about.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Should a person downgrade their resume for entry level positions? Well, I guess it depends on what you call a downgrade is. I think because we do deal with a lot of transitioning service members, right? And obviously your previous experience matters, even if it's not relevant. But you want the initial information to speak to what you're doing now, though. So, if you're getting out and now you're doing, you went into cybersecurity or, you're going into some development role, web developer or something like that. Obviously you have entry level skill now, even though you have, retired experience from the military, right? But you still are entry level in that sense because your skills for that are entry level. So you would want your objective statement to say, entry level, cybersecurity engineer, transition from the military, starting anew. And that'll make sense to the reader though, right? So it's not necessarily downgrading your role, but you'd want that information to say what you're doing though, right? So it doesn't leave it for guess. Because I'm sure there are recruiters that will look at a resume that's got 25 years of experience on an entry-level role and be like, this person doesn't want this role. They don't want the pay that's going to come with an entry-level role, right? But you do want the entry-level role. So that's a big one. That's a big one. We deal with that one quite a bit. What else can we talk about? Resumes and the applicant tracking system.
One other thing, Brian, I was going to mention it at the very beginning, is whenever you're putting in your information, your name, your email, all your stuff. One of the biggest things that I've came across here recently, and I think we spoke about it last week, was a professional email address. I saw one the other day that was like, I don't even want to say what it was, but it was absolutely, it was insane the way that it was. And my first thing was, hey, you need to, first name dot last name at, Yahoo or Google or AWL, whatever it is, AOL. Definitely want to have a professional email address because people see that and they won't take you serious if it's like, fun in the
I wouldn't do it. Yeah, well, we've all definitely seen them. So
yeah.
One I can add in there though too. I know we talked about adding graphics and stuff like that, but please don't add your picture to your resume either. That's just not. We're not realtors around here. You know what I mean? So, definitely don't put a picture of yourself on your resume either. If you have one on there, take that bad boy off. It's unnecessary. Part of the process anyway. But the rule of thumb to really go with is it's simple. The simpler you make your resume without being overly formatted is easier for recruiters to read, right? Because we're reading it on a computer screen in a system as well. It's just a page on the screen. It's not even the whole screen, right? Unless I download it, right? We don't download 200 resumes. We read them out of the system in that sense. So believe it or not, it works. A simpler format will work, And, if you're looking for information to put into, your experiences and you're trying to put some weight to your previous experiences and put them in there right. I'm a real big fan. I mean, it's always objective, right? But I'm a real big fan. And maybe 2 or 3 sentences of what the role's responsibilities were kind of on a day-to-day basis. And then some bullet points on, tasks, actions, and results of things you did. Was tasked with, had this task, here's what I did, and here was the results. Some of those kind of bullet points off of that, because then it adds that weight to it as well. What else? No more questions, folks? I don't know why mine's not scrolling. Thoughts on bold in resumes and mid-sentence. I like that question, Mark. I ain't gonna lie. I like that question. I'm kind of a fan of it in the sense if it's one of the relevant skills to that role, and I know I need someone that has certified ethical hacking or some, ITIL V3 or whatever. And those things are kind of bold, and they're bold, and they draw my eye in. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm a fan of them. What do you think, Brent? I like them on there if it's relevant. Yeah,
absolutely. I would.
I mean, that's a good way to kind of stand out in that sense.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't get too crazy with it. I wouldn't put like the highlighter on it and stuff like that, but just bolding it. I'm a huge fan of that if it's, especially if it's directly relevant to that job description you're applying to and the requirements. Absolutely.
Sandy just wrote, should all resume bullets be impact statements? Does it matter if some sound more like tasks?
Well, I think you're kind of on it with tasks though too, because you can have those impact statements, but then you can have the tasks, just add the actions and results. You were tasked with this is what you did, and this was the outcome.
Quantitative.
So it's kind of like the STAR method. If everyone knows the STAR method for interviewing, which would be the situation, tasks, actions, and results when you're doing your interview prep. But I usually say take out the situation because you want to put really relevant information as possible. So you don't want to get, kind of out of task there, but your task, actions, and results, will add some of that impact as well. So impact statements as well as adding the tasks, great. Just add the actions and results as well, because it shows your impact. And was it Sadia said, so my understanding is that only relevant experience is supposed to be included in the resume tailored to the role in question. Is that frowned upon, or should all experience, regardless of relevance, be added? It's always a tough one. It kind of depends on what you're referencing. So if it's, if you're getting out of the military or something like that, and you've already established like a 15-year or 20 or 30-year career somewhere, and you're changing things, you're changing career direction, having some of that previous on there is okay, but you want the first page of your resume to be absolutely relevant though. But what you want to stay from is irrelevant information, like especially like if you're just getting out of college or something like that and kind of kicking off your professional career. What you don't want to have on there is, roles that are completely unimpactful to your ability to do a role. If you worked at Pizza Hut or Little Caesars or Subway, you wouldn't want to have any of that on there. And especially like I know when we talk with a lot of military folks, I'll just use that as an example. A lot of folks of us will get out and we'll include, medals we earned and stuff like that, which I always tell folks to scrap those off there too, because it's really irrelevant information. Not that the award itself is impactful to you, but it has no weight on qualifying you for a role though, because you have to hope that the person reading it even knows what those are. So yeah, having previous work history is okay on there, but you want the last piece as much as possible. So even if you don't have any experience in that yet, which maybe a lot of folks on the call do, like if you've transferred over into a new skill set now, or you're just starting your professional career, you can still add stuff you did to get where you are though. So, I always tell folks like, I've never taken the Security Plus exam or Splunk or Linux or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure you didn't just walk into it and walk out that day. You got it. You had to do some labs, had to do some exercises. You had to play with cybersecurity things, practice some stigging or something like that, intrusion detection. Add those things you did on there though too as course objectives that you completed. Was in court. Was tasked with task action results. Just add it in there. We were tasked with doing this in cybersecurity. We did that, and this is what I did. And that kind of stuff too. Because experience doesn't necessarily have to be paid experience. If you run Discord servers at home or something like that, I mean, you can add that on there too, because I mean that's still relevant to some knowledge if it's relevant to what you're doing, what you're trying to do, that sort of thing.
Jillian wrote, what
some of the questions?
People transitioning into tech careers, like perspective on resumes from candidates transitioning from fields like news or media into tech positions?
Yeah. I mean, that's the same thing. Like when you're doing that transition, you're starting a new career path, if you will. It's just creating that break. It's okay to have that information on your resume. I wouldn't overly overload some of those previously experiences because it's going to be a lot of irrelevant information though, even though it's relevant to you and your career history. If you were, like say command sergeant major or something, this and that, instead of having this huge piece of information about what you were doing as a command sergeant major, maybe reduce that down a little bit so that it's not overwhelming the resume, because you really need that initial hit to count for you. So that's where that objective statement and being able to add some of those additional details to your resume. So, I work with a lot of folks that are going through like SkillBridge. If anyone knows on the call what SkillBridge is, I'm sure there's some are. I work with a lot of folks going through SkillBridge that are doing that career transition into more cybersecurity related style roles. And we do talk a lot about putting, all those certifications you got, but add in some of the projects and things you had to do to be able to get the certification in there. And that'll expand your resume to give it more cyber or tech related information. And then, the career you're leaving now becomes the secondary piece of who you are in that sense. And another good point on that though, too, with someone bringing up, the ranks and stuff like that. Absolutely, please don't, if you were like the command sergeant major or something, don't use that as your title anymore. You got to find a more effective, operations manager, a more industry relevant titles in that sense though too. Those type of things.
KB just asked, what's the ideal timeline to apply? I'm trying to balance not applying too early. I have a job before separation. I'll take this one, Brian. So KB, that's a great question. So on a lot of our funded positions, they're looking for people within the next 30 to 40 days. I mean, normally from the time you apply, you get your interview. It's like 30 days from interview to butt in a seat. So 30 to 60 days is what I'd normally say from your transition date. And if it's a little bit longer and you get that interview, that's something that you just need to let that hiring manager and that TA team know, hey, you know what, my separation date, my ATS date is this date. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to work with you. They'll let the customer know, hey, we have the perfect candidate. We're going to get them in here, but it's going to be 45 days or 60 days down the road. Now, if some of these positions that you're interested in and you're like, hey, I found a position and it's a contingent position or it's a proposal, I would start applying right now, because a lot of those proposals aren't going to pop until the end of this fiscal year. So probably October timeframe, September through October. So start applying to those now, because what they're doing is they're collecting resumes, they're pulling out the best candidates, and they aren't necessarily calling people right this second, but they are holding onto those resumes for when that time gets, 45 days out. So hopefully that answered.
Yeah. And definitely network in with somebody. That's what I would, I'd say that's the key, really, because I call it kind of the apply and pray method. If you think, you have to be networked in somewhere, just applying and praying someone reads your resume and finds you the most qualified. it's a tough go, so being networked in, I mean, it's easy to do at any company. You can get on any company's LinkedIn, search the employees, search them by skill set, or if you're a veteran, search them by skill set and veteran, that type of thing, and reach out to them. But using kind of that format we talked about with like, hey, I'm trying to break into your company. I applied to this role. Here's how I'm qualified, because they can refer you. And a lot of companies offer referral bonuses and stuff like that. So, you can do that as well. But being networked in, yeah, I mean, that's the big one. Because we're all aware, as we've transitioned, we're very aware that it's like, oh man, this end date's coming. I need to have something locked.
The next question, I don't want to chop up the names, so I apologize. But the next question is, do you have to have a security clearance to apply for any positions at Peraton? So the answer is yes and no. So on our website, whenever you go to our portal, it'll actually state what the clearance level is. Like I stated before, the report that we send out, it says everything from no clearance to agency clearance to public trust, all the way up to an SCI with a full scope poly. So if it states on there, on the requisition, must have DOD, TSSCI, that is a hard stop. That's a requirement. But if it says public trust, ability to obtain, or to obtain, you do not have to have that clearance coming in the door. But you always want to make sure that it says ability to obtain if you are applying to those positions and you do not have a clearance.
I will pull it up. So I'm operating on the wrong screen. I'm looking at the video side. So I'm just going to go to search. I like that page better. So as you guys can see on the page, though, too, to kind of just add some context into it, is when you're looking over here, you'll see these things right here. So if you don't have a clearance, though, but you're eligible for a public trust, you can just sort by those two alone, and then search, by, if you were looking for, or you can see it brings up already the customer technical specialist, that's more of that somewhat entry level cybersecurity professional or help desk type of role. And that's usually some advice that we give to folks that are transferring into those tech roles, though, too, is you're going to have to have you're going to have to open the bandwidth up a little bit. If you're just looking for a cybersecurity role, that could be a lot more difficult. There's not a significant amount of entry-level cybersecurity roles in whole, right? Because companies don't use entry-level cybersecurity, right? Like, it's like you don't put the captain of the ship as the guy that just graduated basic, right? So that's the same thing. So opening up that bandwidth, looking at those customer technical specialists, help desk tier ones, NOC analysts, and SOC analyst roles will also help with that sort of thing as well. But I just wanted to show everyone that as well, that, being able to, sort by these as well will save you a lot of time, because otherwise, as you can see, we got quite a few roles on there right now. So just trying to go through those roles will take forever. But what you don't want to do, as Brent's saying, is you don't want to waste your time applying to roles that, if you don't have a top secret on, that you'll never be considered for. But to give you an example, is what I was talking about, folks, when I was talking about using parentheses and stuff like that, or quotations, you name it. So if I go in here and I put ability to obtain, that's going to bring me up every role that has the ability to obtain a clearance. So even though it might say TSSCI with poly, if we click in that one, it's going to tell me what they're looking to obtain. So it means this one says you have to have a TSSCI already with the ability to obtain a poly. So you still have to have the TSSCI. Let me see. So this one's probably going to say ability to obtain SCI, I'm going to guess. Right. Active top secret with ability to obtain SCI, those type of things. But some of them, the more niche the role, some of them will give you a full outright clearance, right? But you also got to keep in mind, you got to be banking. You're going to be highly qualified for that role because chances of someone with the clearance applying is high too. So you'd want to have the best qualifications out there because it's still the best candidate type of thing. So I just want to give you an idea of things you can do. And the reason you put it in those like the quotation marks, because it brings back that exact wording. Meaning if I didn't put that in there, it would bring every instance of ability and every instance of to and every instance of obtain, which we don't want that. We want that exact sentence, right? That exact word lineup. So you can search by skills like that then too, so if you were, I'm using the wrong. So I don't know any, if I was looking for, I don't know, CE, that's probably not going to work. Give me one, Brett. Got anything about it? Yeah, I don't know, but you guys, I think everyone kind of gets it. You can play around with it and then search by skills you have that are specific. Or what if I just try? I think that's how you spell it. Maybe not. Oh, did I have the clearances pop? Yeah. So there you go. I can give you an example. But those are some examples, folks. I want to give everyone a little bit of idea how you can search for jobs like that as well, to take some of the stress of searching by title, because searching by title is it can take you all over the place. But we can also, and just so everyone's aware, if you're on here and you go to our military and veterans page, we do post recorded sessions of these. You can see them on there. We also do some featured roles that are specific to folks that may be transitioning from the military and are very military related, if you will. Yeah, just wanted to show that to everyone as well. So you can always go watch our previously recorded sessions at the same time. Join our talent community where you can set up alerts to apply for roles. Because setting up those alerts, really what that does for you. I know I'm one of those people, I hate getting those kind of emails, but when you're in the job hunt, you kind of got to do it because timing's everything when it comes to applying to roles out here, right? Because if a role's been open for 2 weeks, like we don't move at the snail's pace around here, right? As Brent mentioned earlier, like we're pretty much a hire in 30 days. We shoot for 30 days or under. So the average, I don't remember what the average was last time, but we're pretty much right on it. So 30 to 45 days, like he said. So if a role's been out 2 weeks already, chances are we're already deep into the interviewing process, probably getting some offers out or something already. So joining that talent community, what that can do is get you notified that the role, the kind of work you selected, it just came open, so you can apply to it, be some of the first in the gate as well. And then you can reach out to one of us, and then we can help concierge your application through that process. So Brent, he says he's loving that freedom on your back wall.
No freedom seeds.
Brent is special to us. Did we miss any questions? I don't think we have.
I see Angel. Angel asked, what if the clearance is coming up on expiration? That's one thing that you definitely want to let the TA or the representative know that you're working with, because we can cage those clearances a lot of the time, especially if a position is upcoming and, hey, you know what, we know the contract is about to open up in the next 60, 90 days. A lot of the times we will cage that clearance to keep it from becoming unadjudicated.
Mm-hmm. And the good thing is we hire pretty fast though too. So unless it's expired, if it's expiring like 10 days, that's work, but I've seen it happen. It kind of depends on the level too, because a secret clearance can be caged real easy compared, to a TSSCI with a poly. But if you got an offer pending or something like that, yeah, that should be doable.
Carla just asked, on the positions, what is the difference between no remote but telework allowed?
Gotcha. So you want to answer that one?
Sure. Right. So Carla, the difference on those is, so whenever it says no remote, whenever we have remote, it's 100% at home or at wherever you choose, but you have to be located within that state. When it says telework allowed, that means normally 1 day a week you're able to work from the house or work from wherever you want to time frame. But the ones that are remote it's a hard requirement that you are within that state. Sometimes they say within 150-mile radius, just because sometimes you will actually have to go into the office, but they are 100% remote for meetings or whatever the case is, a huddle. But the telework is normally 1 day to 2 days at the max to where you can work from the house or wherever.
Yep. I used to be confused on that one though too, until I learned when remote and telework started to really become a thing back in the day. I was like, what's the difference? Oh. Well, that's a good question. It says, do you only recruit vet positions? Do not. No. So we, like I was saying, I don't remember if the podcast was going at that time. We had those technical issues at the beginning, but no, I mean, we work with all positions here at Paraton. You don't even have to be a veteran. I mean, we work with dependents, spouses, people that have no affiliation with the military, because we do that stuff too. So while we are the Military and Veterans Talent Operations team, that's our primary focus. We can work with anybody, absolutely, for any role at the company. And let me stop sharing that. Guess I'll reshare that back up here in case anybody needs it. And well, I think that's about it. If we got no more questions coming in, I mean, we might be able to pop off.
I already put both of our contact information into the chat, so please feel free to reach out to us, whether it's whatever. We'll absolutely get right back to you.
You bet. And we appreciate everyone coming today. Final thoughts from me would be, if you're in the job market right now, we're well aware that the job market is difficult. Don't think you're the only one. If you're struggling to get interviews and get forward in processes at a lot of places, don't think you're the only one. That's pretty much everyone we're working with, right? That's what keeps us employed, right? Is we got to help push things through and that type of sense. So, it's difficult. Just keep pushing at it though. That's the only way. But we understand as well. So definitely reach out and work with us. And once again, on behalf of Paraton's Military and Veterans team, feel free to reach out us anytime at that email address right there, militaryconnect@paraton.com. Find each of us on LinkedIn and look our careers.paraton.com. Let us know if you're applying to anything. We love what we do. So we love getting folks hired. So reach out to us. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us today.